The black BMW rolled into my driveway that Saturday morning, and I knew right then this wasn't going to be a normal visit. My son Martin stepped out first, dressed in a charcoal suit like he was heading court, not coming to see his old man. Then came Vanessa, his wife, wearing that crisp gray lawyer getup she always wore when she meant business. She had a leather briefcase in her hand. A briefcase to visit family. I stood at the door watching them approach, and something cold settled in my chest. Parents know. We always know when something's wrong with our kids, even when they're 40 years old and think they've got the world figured out. Martin wasn't smiling. Vanessa had that look, the one I'd seen before, like she was sizing up a property she wanted to flip. They didn't hug me. Martin barely made eye contact. Vanessa just walked past me into the house like she owned it already, set that briefcase down on my dining table with a thud that echoed through the room. The same table where Martin used to do his homework, where his mother Lydia and I used to share coffee every Sunday morning before she passed. "Dad," Martin said, and his voice had that rehearsed quality to it. Flat, distant. "We need to talk about the house." Have you ever felt your whole world shift in a single sentence? Like the ground beneath you just turned to ice? That's what it felt like standing there, watching my only son, my flesh and blood, look at me like I was a problem he needed to solve. Vanessa opened that briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. Legal papers. The kind with tiny print and highlighted sections ready for a signature. "Hi, viewers. Kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. Arthur," Vanessa said, and she never called me Dad, always Arthur. "This property is a financial burden. The taxes, maintenance, insurance, it's all too much for someone your age. We've spoken to an advisor, and the best solution is for you to transfer the deed to Martin. We'll handle everything from there." I looked at those papers, then at her, then at my son, who still wouldn't meet my eyes. "You want me to sign over my house?" Martin shifted his weight, uncomfortable. "It's for your own good, Dad. You're not getting any younger. This way it stays in the family." I almost laughed. In the family. Right. Just not with the guy who built it. This house wasn't just walls and windows. It was every drop of sweat from 40 years of plumbing work. Every late night, I spent expanding my business from a one-man operation to Delaney Waterworks. Every sacrifice I made after Lydia died, raising Martin alone, making sure he got into the best schools, became a surgeon, had everything I never had growing up. And now he was here in his expensive suit with his lawyer wife, asking me to hand it all over while I was still breathing. Vanessa slid the papers across the table toward me. "All we need is your signature." I leaned back in my chair, studying them both. The silence stretched out so long I could hear the old grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Martin fidgeted. Vanessa stayed stone-faced, professional. I remembered something Lydia used to say, back when we were young and broke and happy. She'd squeeze my hand and tell me, "Arthur, the day money replaces love, you'll know who's who." I was looking at who's who right now. When I didn't move, didn't reach for a pen, Vanessa sighed. That impatient, condescending sigh people use when they think you're not smart enough to understand what's good for you. "Arthur, I'm saying this as your daughter-in-law and as your legal counsel. If you refuse, it could complicate things. Your property is large, your estate plan unclear. If something happens to you, probate court could intervene, and... Are you threatening me?" The words came out quiet, but they landed hard. Martin flinched. Vanessa's eyes flickered to him, then back to me. "We're just trying to protect you," Martin said, his voice barely above a whisper. Protect me. The same son I protected his whole life. The one I held together after his mother died. The one whose medical school loans I paid off. Whose first car I bought. Whose wedding I helped fund. Now he was protecting me by stealing my home before I was even gone. I stood up slowly. My knees ached. They always do these days, but my voice was steady. "You too have thought this through, haven't you?" Vanessa smiled. Thin. Calculated. "It's for the best." I smiled back at her, and something in my expression made Martin look away again. "You know what, Vanessa? You're right. Maybe it is time to handle things legally. Her eyes lit up. Victory. She thought she'd won. So you'll sign? I picked up the papers, looked at them one more time, then set them back down. No, I said calmly, but you're going to wish I had. The confidence drained from Vanessa's face. Martin looked up, confused, maybe a little scared. What's that supposed to mean? Vanessa demanded. I didn't answer, just walked to the door and opened it. I think you should both leave now. I need some time to think. They gathered their papers, their briefcase, their wounded pride. As they walked out, Vanessa turned back. You're making a mistake, Arthur. A big one. I watched them drive away, that black BMW kicking up dust on the gravel path. And then I closed the door, walked back to my living room, and sat down in the same chair where Lydia and I used to watch the sunset over the Hudson River. I wasn't angry. I was something else entirely. I was ready, because what they didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I'd been preparing for this day for 20 years. Since long before Vanessa ever entered the picture. Since back when Lydia was still alive, and we made a decision together. A decision that would protect everything we'd built. They wanted my house? They could have it, except they couldn't, because it wasn't mine to give anymore. I wasn't always a man with a $4.7 million house overlooking the Hudson River. There was a time when I didn't have much more than a toolkit, a used truck, and a stubborn refusal to quit. I grew up in Troy, New York, in a neighborhood where most families were one paycheck away from disaster. My old man worked at the steel plant until it closed down when I was 16. After that, he worked wherever he could, loading docks, construction sites, gas stations. My mother cleaned houses for the wealthy families upstate. I watched them both work themselves to the bone and still struggle to put food on the table. I learned something important from that. Hard work alone isn't enough. You need skill. You need to offer something people can't easily replace. So at 18, I became an apprentice plumber. Not glamorous, not prestigious, but necessary. People always need plumbers. Toilets break at 2 in the morning. Pipes burst in the winter. Water heaters flood basements. And someone has to fix it. I was that someone. For 10 years, I worked for other people, learning everything I could. I showed up early, stayed late, took jobs nobody else wanted. The crawl spaces, the flooded basements, the houses with septic problems that made grown men gag. I did it all with a smile because I knew each job was teaching me something. By the time I was 28, I had enough saved to start Delaney Waterworks. Just me, my truck, and a phone number in the yellow pages. The first year, I barely broke even. The second year, I hired my first employee. By year 5, I had a crew of 6 and more work than we could handle. That's when I met Lydia. She was a secretary at the real estate office downtown, and I'd been called in to fix a pipe that burst in their basement. I remember walking up from that flooded mess, covered in muck and rust, and there she was at the top of the stairs with the most beautiful smile I'd ever seen. "You look like you've been to war," she said. "Just lost a battle with a 60-year-old pipe." I told her, "But I won." She laughed. Actually laughed. Not the polite kind, but the real kind that makes someone's whole face light up. We got married 8 months later. Lydia wasn't interested in fancy things. She grew up simple, like me. What she wanted was a home, a real home, a place where we could raise a family and build something that lasted. So I worked, not just as a plumber anymore, but in construction, in real estate. I learned how to buy properties, fix them up, sell them for profit. I expanded the business, hired more people, took bigger jobs, commercial buildings, municipal contracts. The work never stopped, but I didn't mind because every dollar I made was another brick in the foundation of our future. By the time I was 45, we'd saved enough to buy the house. Our house, 5 bedrooms, colonial style, sitting on 3 acres overlooking the Hudson River. The previous owners were an elderly couple who let it fall into disrepair. Nobody else wanted it, but I saw what it could be. I spent 2 years restoring that house myself. Every weekend, every evening after work. Lydia would bring me lemonade and sandwiches while I replaced floorboards, rewired electrical, replumbed the whole system. She'd sit on the porch steps, 8 months pregnant with Martin. talking to me about what color we should paint the nursery. We painted it blue. Martin was born 3 weeks later, right as I finished installing the crib I'd built by hand. He was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, Lydia's eyes, my stubborn chin. Holding him that first time, I made a promise. This child would have every opportunity one didn't. He'd never worry about money. Never wonder if we could afford something he needed. Never watch his parents break themselves just to survive. I kept that promise. Maybe too well. Martin grew up in that house, surrounded by love and comfort. He had his own room, his own space. We took him to baseball games, bought him music lessons, enrolled him in the best schools. When Lydia got sick, cancer, sudden and vicious, I made sure Martin never saw me fall apart. I was strong for him. I held it together while my whole world crumbled. She died when he was 11, the day we buried her. Martin stood next to me at the grave, small and silent, and I put my hand on his shoulder. I'm here, I told him. I'm always going to be here. And I was, through middle school, high school, college applications. I pushed him hard, maybe too hard sometimes. But it paid off. Full scholarship to Cornell, then medical school, then his residency in cardiothoracic surgery. I was so proud I could barely speak at his graduation. He'd made it, made something of himself, become someone who saved lives, who had respect and status, and a future brighter than anything I could have dreamed for myself. I thought I'd done everything right. But somewhere between his success and mine, between his ambition and my simple life, a distance grew. The phone calls became less frequent, the visits shorter. He moved to Boston for a fellowship, then Manhattan for a prestigious position. And every time we talked, it felt like I was speaking to a stranger wearing my son's face. Then he met Vanessa. I should have known, the first time she walked into my house, what kind of person she was. It was Thanksgiving, 3 years ago. Martin brought her home to meet me. She was polished, professional, attractive in that sharp-edged way that made you feel like you were being evaluated. She walked through my home, the home I built with my bare hands, and I watched her eyes move from room to room, calculating, appraising. When we sat down for dinner, she said casually, "Arthur, this place must be hard to maintain at your age." I brushed it off. I managed just fine. But Martin jumped in. Dad's pretty stubborn about asking for help. They both laughed. I didn't. That was the first crack. Over the next few years, the cracks widened. Every conversation with Martin seemed to circle back to the same things. Dad, have you updated your will? Dad, what's your long-term plan? Dad, you really should think about downsizing. Downsizing. As if 50 years of my life could just be boxed up and moved to some retirement condo. I stopped calling as much. They stopped visiting. Holidays became phone calls. Phone calls became texts. And the house, my house, Lydia's house, became quieter. But I wasn't lonely. I filled my time restoring vintage cars in the garage, volunteering at the community center, teaching kids basic carpentry and plumbing, mentoring young tradesmen who reminded me of myself at 18, hungry to learn, willing to work, just needing someone to believe in them. I even started a small scholarship fund through the local trade school. Nothing fancy, just a few $1,000s a year to help kids who couldn't afford tuition. Lydia would have liked that. Then last spring, my phone rang. Martin's number. The distance between a father and son doesn't happen overnight. It's not one argument, one betrayal, one moment. It's 1,000 small things. Missed calls, short answers. The gradual replacement of warmth with obligation. With Martin, it started so slowly I didn't even notice at first. When he was in medical school, we'd talk every week. He'd call me late at night after studying, exhausted but excited, telling me about anatomy class or the surgery he'd observed. I'd listen for hours, even when I barely understood half the medical terms he used. I didn't need to understand. I just needed to hear his voice, hear that fire in him, that passion. But then came the residency. 80-hour weeks, 36-hour shifts. The phone calls became monthly, then every few months. I understood. He was busy, saving lives, building a career, I was proud. Then he moved to Boston for a fellowship in cardiothoracic surgery. We went from phone calls to texts. Short ones. Busy today. Talk soon. Miss you. But the talk soon never came. I'd watch my phone, waiting. Sometimes I'd call him, and it would go straight to voicemail. I'd leave messages. Hey, son, just checking in. Call when you can. He'd text back hours later. Sorry, Dad. Crazy day. Love you. Love you. 2 words that used to mean everything, but started feeling like an automatic response. The kind of thing you type without thinking. Then Vanessa entered his life, and what little connection we had left started to unravel completely. She was a corporate lawyer at some big Manhattan firm. Expensive suits. Expensive tastes. The kind of woman who measured success in billable hours and corner offices. When Martin first told me about her, he sounded different, more formal, like he was trying to impress me with her credentials instead of telling me about her as a person. She went to Yale Law, Dad, top of her class. She's working on a major acquisition deal right now. That's great, son. But what's she like? He paused. What do you mean? I mean, what's she like? Is she kind? Does she make you laugh? Another pause. Yeah, Dad, she's great. But he didn't sound convinced. They got married 2 years later in Manhattan. Big wedding. Expensive venue. 200 guests I didn't know. I stood there in my rented tux, feeling like a stranger at my own son's wedding. Vanessa's family was there, lawyers, executives, doctors, people who talked about vacation homes and stock portfolios and country clubs. I made small talk, smiled, shook hands. But the whole time, I kept looking for my son in the crowd, hoping to catch a moment alone with him, to tell him I was proud, to tell him his mother would have loved to see this day. I never got that moment. After the wedding, they moved to Manhattan, a penthouse apartment in Tribeca. Martin sent me photos. Marble countertops, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the city that probably costs more per month than most people make in a year. This is incredible, son, I told him over phone. You've really made it. Thanks, Dad. Vanessa found it. She's got great taste. Vanessa. Everything became about Vanessa. What Vanessa wanted. What Vanessa thought. What Vanessa's plans were. I started to wonder if my son had any plans of his own anymore. The visits home stopped almost entirely. Holidays became phone calls. Sorry, Dad. Vanessa's family is doing Thanksgiving this year. We've got a work thing for Christmas. Easter's tough with my surgery schedule. There was always a reason, always an excuse. I'd sit in that big house on holidays, alone, eating Lydia's recipes by myself, looking at the empty chairs around the table. The house that used to be filled with laughter and warmth felt hollow. Every room echoed, but I adapted. I always have. I filled my days with purpose. I spent mornings at the community center, teaching carpentry and basic plumbing to teenagers who've been written off by everyone else. Kids from broken homes. Kids who reminded me of myself at that age, rough around the edges, but hungry to learn something real, something useful. I restored vintage cars in my garage. A 67 Mustang, a 72 Chevy Nova. Working with my hands, fixing things, making something broken whole again, it kept me sane. I took long walks by the Hudson River, the same path Lydia and I used to walk together. Sometimes I'd talk to her, out loud. Didn't care if anyone thought I was crazy. He's drifting away from me, LYD. I'd say to the wind, I don't know how to reach him anymore. And in those quiet moments, I'd remember something she told me years ago, when Martin was still in high school and starting to pull away like all teenagers do. Arthur, she'd said, you can't hold on too tight. You have to let him go. Trust that what you taught him will bring him back. But what if I taught him wrong? What if giving him everything he wanted taught him that things matter more than people? The phone calls from Martin became more transactional, less about connection, more about inventory. Dad, have you thought about setting up a living trust? Dad, at your age, you should really have someone managing your finances. Dad, that house is a lot for one person. Have you considered what you'll do if you can't maintain it anymore? Every conversation felt like a gentle push toward some invisible edge, like he was preparing for me to disappear, so he could manage what I left behind. It hurt, more than I wanted to admit. Then one night, about 6 months before that Saturday morning visit, Martin called. It was late, past midnight. I'd been asleep but grabbed the phone fast, hoping maybe something was wrong, maybe he needed me. Dad, sorry to call so late. It's fine. You okay? Yeah, I've been thinking. Vanessa and we're doing really well financially. We want to make sure you're taken care of. My chest tightened. I'm doing fine, son. I know, but hear me out. What if we set up something where you transfer the house into my name now, avoid the estate taxes later, and you still live there for as long as you want? It's just smart planning. There it was, the thing I'd been dreading. Martin, we've talked about this. I'm not ready to. Dad, I'm trying to help. Vanessa's a lawyer. She knows how this stuff works. If you wait until later, the state's going to take a huge chunk. This way, it stays in the family. In the family. Code for in my name. I appreciate the concern, son, but I've got my own plans. Silence. Then, colder. Fine. Just trying to look out for you. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there in the dark, phone in my hand, feeling something break inside me that I couldn't quite name. That's when I knew. Not someday. Not eventually. Soon. They were coming for the house. For everything Lydia and I built. Everything I'd sacrificed for. And my son, my own flesh and blood, was leading the charge. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in Lydia's chair, the one by the window overlooking the river, and I thought about everything I'd worked for, everything I'd given him. And I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. I'd raised a son who'd forgotten where he came from. 3 months later, Martin called again. That formal tone, that rehearsed delivery. Dad, Vanessa and I are coming to visit. We need to discuss something important. I already knew what it was. So I cleaned the house, baked the pie, set the table with Lydia's china. And I waited, because what Martin didn't know, what Vanessa definitely didn't know, was that I'd been preparing for this moment for 20 years. Since long before she entered the picture. Since back when Lydia and I made a decision together. Sitting at that same dining table, planning for a future we knew might include exactly this kind of betrayal. We'd hoped we were wrong. Hoped our son would be different. But hope doesn't protect you. Preparation does. When that black BMW pulled into my driveway that Saturday morning, when I saw them step out dressed for business instead of family, when Vanessa set that briefcase down on my table like she was conducting a hostile takeover, I wasn't surprised. I was ready. The week before Martin and Vanessa showed up at my door, I did what I always do when something big is coming. I prepared, not with panic, not with anger, with quiet, deliberate action. I started by cleaning the house from top to bottom, dusted every surface, vacuumed every rug, polished the hardwood floors until they gleamed, cleaned the windows so the morning light streamed through without a single streak. Some people might think I was being foolish, tidying up for the people who were about to ambush me. But that's not why I did it. I did it for Lydia. This house was hers as much as it was mine. Every room held her fingerprints. The kitchen where she taught Martin to make pancakes. The living room where we'd watch old movies on Friday nights. The garden where she'd spend hours planting flowers she'd never see bloom because the cancer took her first. If this was going to be the battlefield, it was going to be a respectful one. I went to the attic and pulled down the old photo albums, thick ones with cracked leather covers, filled with pictures from when Martin was young, his first day of school, his little league games, his high school graduation, pictures of him and Lydia, her arm around his shoulders, both of them smiling. I sat on the floor up there for hours, flipping through those pages, remembering what it felt like when my son still looked at me with trust instead of calculation. There was one photo I stared at longer than the others. Martin, maybe 7 years old, sitting on my shoulders at a 4th of July parade. His hands gripped my head, his face split wide with joy. I remembered that day, remembered how light he felt, how simple everything was. Ice cream and fireworks, and going home exhausted and happy. I wondered when that kid disappeared. when the weight of ambition and money and status crushed the boy who used to think his dad could do anything. I put the albums on the coffee table, in the living room. Maybe he'd see them. Maybe he'd remember. Probably not, but I had to try. Next, I went to the kitchen and pulled out Lydia's recipe box. A small wooden thing she'd kept for 40 years, filled with index cards in her handwriting, pot roast, chicken soup, blueberry muffins, and her famous apple pie. Martin used a bag for that pie every birthday. She'd make it from scratch. The crust so flaky it would crumble at the first bite, the apples perfectly spiced with cinnamon and nutmeg. After she died, I taught myself how to make it. Took me a dozen tries before I got it right. But I did it because it felt like keeping a piece of her alive. I made that pie the Friday before they came. Mixed the dough, peeled and sliced the apples. Set the oven to 350 degrees. Just like her card said, the smell filled the whole house. For a moment, I could almost believe she was still here, humming in the kitchen, telling me I was cutting the apples too thick. I set the pie on the counter to cool and looked around the kitchen. Everything was perfect, clean, warm, welcoming, ready for people who didn't deserve it. Saturday morning came slow. I woke up before sunrise like I always do, made coffee, and sat on the back porch watching the river. The Hudson was calm that day, smooth as glass. The early light turned the water silver. I thought about calling Martin, telling him not to come, telling him I knew what he was planning, and to just forget the whole thing. But what would that accomplish? He'd come anyway. They'd come anyway. This confrontation was inevitable. So I let it come. I spent the morning setting the table. Lydia's good china. The silverware we got as a wedding gift 50 years ago. 3 place settings. Me, Martin, and Vanessa. A family meal that wasn't going to be about family at all. I sliced the pie and arranged it on a serving plate. Put coffee on to brew. Set out cream and sugar, even though I knew Vanessa probably drank hers black and bitter, just like her personality. Then I sat down in the living room and waited. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked, each second loud and deliberate. I counted them without meaning to. 60 seconds. 120. 300. Then I heard it, the sound of tires on gravel. I stood up and walked to the window, watched that black BMW roll up the driveway, watched Martin step out, adjusting his tie, looking at the house like it was a piece of real estate he was evaluating instead of the place where he grew up, watched Vanessa emerge from the passenger side, straightening her gray suit jacket, reaching into the back seat for that leather briefcase. A briefcase to visit your father-in-law. I opened the door before they could knock. Martin? Vanessa? Hey, Dad. Martin's voice was tight, formal. Vanessa just nodded. Arthur. They walked in. Neither of them took off their coats. That should have been the first sign. You don't take off your coat when you're not planning to stay long. I made coffee, I said, and pie, Lydia's recipe. Martin glanced at the dining table, at the photo albums on the coffee table, then back at me. That's great, Dad, but maybe we should talk first. Vanessa was already moving toward the dining table. She set that briefcase down with a deliberate thud. The sound echoed to the room, heavy and final. Sure, I said. Let's talk. I sat down at the head of the table. My spot, the same spot I'd sat in for 40 years. The same spot where I'd helped Martin with homework, where Lydia and I planned our future, where I'd eaten 1,000 meals alone after she died. Martin sat across from me, wouldn't meet my eyes. Vanessa sat next to him, opened the briefcase, and pulled out papers, legal documents. I could see the highlighted sections from across the table. For a moment, nobody spoke. The only sound was the clock ticking in the hallway and the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Then Vanessa cleared her throat. Arthur, we're here because we care about your future. I almost laughed. Care about my future. Right. Go on, I said. She slid the papers toward me. This property is substantial. Nearly $5 million in value. The taxes alone are probably $30,000 a year. Maintenance, insurance, utilities, it's a tremendous burden for someone your age. Someone my age. Like I was ancient, helpless, incompetent. I managed just fine, I said. For now, Vanessa continued, her voice smooth and practiced. But what happens in 5 years? 10? What happens if you get sick? If you fall? If you can't maintain this place anymore? Then I'll deal with it. Martin finally spoke up. Dad, we're just trying to be practical. If something happens to you and the house is still in your name, it goes through probate. The state takes a huge chunk. Legal fees eat up more. By the time it's settled, half the value could be gone. I looked at my son, really looked at him, searched his face for any sign of the boy I'd raised, the kid who used to climb into my lap when he was scared, the teenager who called me when he got his first speeding ticket, panicked and apologetic. That person was gone. In his place sat a man who talked about my death like it was a budget meeting. So your solution is? I asked, even though I already knew. Vanessa tapped the papers. Transfer the deed to Martin now. You can continue living here for as long as you're able. But legally, the property becomes his. No probate. No estate taxes. Clean and simple. Clean and simple. Like stealing your father's home while he's still alive. I leaned back in my chair, studied them both. Vanessa looked confident, certain. Martin looked uncomfortable, but committed. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment idea. They'd planned this, probably for months. And what if I say no? I asked quietly. Vanessa's expression hardened just slightly. Then you'd be making things very difficult. For yourself and for Martin. There it was. The threat hidden behind concern. Martin shifted in his seat. Dad, please. Just think about it. This is a smart thing to do. The smart thing. The practical thing. The thing that benefits them and costs me everything. I looked at those papers. At the highlighted lines waiting for my signature. At my son, who couldn't even look me in the eye. And I smiled. Not a happy smile. Not a warm one. But the kind of smile you give when you finally see something clearly after years of denial. You know what? I said softly. You're right. Vanessa's eyes lit up. So you'll sign? I picked up the papers, pretended to read them, then set them back down. No, I said, but you're absolutely right that it's time to handle things properly. Legally. The confidence slipped from Vanessa's face. What does that mean? I stood up. It means I need time to think, to consult with my own attorney, to make sure I understand exactly what I'm signing away. Martin stood too. Dad, I think you two should leave now. The room went cold, silent. Vanessa gathered the papers, shoved them back in the briefcase. You're making a mistake, Arthur. Maybe, I said, but it's my mistake to make. They left without another word. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't touch the coffee or the pie. Just walked out to that black BMW and drove away. I stood at the door watching them go. And when I finally closed it, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity. They thought they'd backed me into a corner. Thought they'd won before the game even started. But what they didn't know was that the game was already over. Had been for 20 years. And I'd won it long before they even knew they were playing. After they left, I stood in that dining room for a long time, just staring at the empty chairs. The coffee I'd made sat untouched, going cold. The pie I'd baked remained perfect and uncut on its serving plate. The photo albums I'd carefully placed on the coffee table hadn't been looked at once. All that preparation, all that hope that maybe, somehow, this would turn into something different than what I knew it would be. But hope is a dangerous thing when you're dealing with people who've already made up their minds. I poured myself a cup of that cold coffee, didn't bother reheating it, and sat back down at the head of the table. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I thought I'd be shaking with anger, with betrayal, with hurt. But I wasn't. I was calm, maybe too calm. Because underneath the hurt, underneath the disappointment of watching my son try to steal from me, there was something else. Something that I'd been building for years, probably since the first time Vanessa walked through this house. Looking at me like I was a piece of property to liquidate. Relief. I was relieved that I'd seen this coming. Relieved that Lydia and I had made the decisions we made 20 years ago. Relieved that I didn't have to wonder anymore whether my son would do the right thing when the time came. Now I knew, and knowing, even when it hurts, is better than wondering. I finished that cold coffee and walked to my study. It's a small room off the main hallway, walls lined with bookshelves and filing cabinets. Most people don't keep paper records anymore. Everything's digital now, stored in clouds and hard drives that can disappear with one wrong click. But I'm old-fashioned. Important documents I keep in physical form, locked in a fireproof safe behind a picture of Lydia that hangs on the wall. I moved the picture aside, worked a combination, her birthday, the number she made me memorize 40 years ago, and pulled out a manila folder, thick with documents, legal papers, notarized letters, trust agreements, the foundation of everything I had built to protect against exactly this moment. I spread the papers across my desk and read through them again, even though I'd read them 100 times before. The trust agreement, the transfer of deed, the beneficiary designations, all of it legal, binding, and completely ironclad. Lydia and I had set this up in 2005. Martin was in medical school then, just starting to change, starting to talk more about money and less about meaning. We'd noticed it, the way you notice the first frost of winter before it really sets in. We were sitting at the same desk, late at night after Martin had called to tell us about his newest achievement, his newest award, his newest reason why he couldn't come home for the holidays. Arthur, Lydia had said quietly, I love our son, but I'm worried about the man he's becoming. I tried to defend him. He's just focused, LYD, driven. That's what it takes to be a surgeon. She shook her head. It's more than that. He's starting to see everything as transactions, costs and benefits. When he talks about coming home, it's like he's calculating whether we're worth the investment of his time. I couldn't argue because I felt it too. That slow shift from connection to obligation. What do we do? I asked. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, we protect what we've built, not from him, but from what he might become. That's when we contacted the attorney, drew up the trust, made the house part of something bigger than family inheritance, something that would outlast our bloodline and actually do some good in the world. The trust was irrevocable. Once we signed it, it couldn't be undone, couldn't be changed, couldn't be contested. The house was no longer ours in the legal sense. It belonged to the Delaney Foundation for Trade Education, a charitable organization designed to fund full scholarships for kids who wanted to learn plumbing, electrical work, carpentry, the trades that built this country but get no respect anymore. Every year, the foundation would fund 5 full-ride scholarships. Kids from low-income families who couldn't afford trade school, who wanted to work with their hands and build real things, who reminded me of the kid I used to be. That was Lydia's idea. If Martin won't carry on your legacy, let's make sure someone does. We funded it with rental income from other properties I owned, small apartment buildings, a few commercial spaces, nothing massive, but enough to generate $40,000-$50,000 a year, enough to change 5 young lives every year. The house itself remained in the trust. I could live in it for the rest of my life. But when I died, it would either be sold to fund more scholarships or converted into a training center for tradespeople. The trust had options, flexibility. But one thing it didn't have was a provision for Martin to inherit it. He'd get the lake cabin, a small property I kept in my name, worth maybe $200,000. Enough to show I hadn't completely cut him out, but nothing close to what he thought he was entitled to. Vanessa's threat about probate court was meaningless. There'd be no probate because there was nothing to probate. The trust handled everything. I sat there looking at those papers, and I felt what Lydia must have felt when we first signed them. Not satisfaction exactly, not victory, just the quiet certainty of having done the right thing, even though it hurt. My phone rang. Martin's number. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Hello. Dad. His voice was tight. Angry. What was that? What was what? You know what I'm talking about. We came all the way up there to help you, and you threw us out. Help me. That's really what he thought this was. Help. Martin, let me ask you something. When's the last time you called just to talk? Not to ask about my will, or my finances, or my plans. Just to talk. Silence. I can't remember either. I said, that's not fair, Dad. I'm busy. You know how demanding my schedule is. I do, but you always seem to find time when you want something from me. That's not true, isn't it? You didn't come to visit me, Martin. You came to get me to sign over my house. That's not a visit. That's a transaction. More silence. Then quieter, Vanessa thinks. I don't care what Vanessa thinks, I said, and my voice was harder than I meant it to be. What do you think, Martin? Is this what you want? To take my home while I'm still alive? I want to protect you. Protect what you've built. By taking it from me? By making sure it stays in the family. It was never going to leave the family, son. But I guess we have different definitions of what family means. I could hear him breathing on the other end. Frustrated. Maybe hurt. Definitely angry. Dad, you're being unreasonable. Vanessa's a lawyer. She knows what she's talking about. If you don't plan properly, you're going to lose everything to taxes and probate fees. I've already planned, Martin. Did it 20 years ago. That stopped him. What? You heard me. This house isn't mine to give you. It hasn't been for a long time. What are you talking about? You'll find out soon enough. Tell Vanessa I'll be in touch with my attorney. We'll handle this properly. Legally. Just like she wanted. Dad. I hung up. My hands were shaking now. Not with fear. With something I couldn't quite name. Grief, maybe. Grief for the relationship I'd lost with my son. Grief for the man he used to be before ambition and money turned him into someone I barely recognized. I sat there in my study as the afternoon light faded to evening, thinking about all the moments I'd missed, all the signs I'd ignored, all the times I told myself he was just busy, just focused, just going through a phase. But it wasn't a phase. This was who he'd become, and I had to accept that. I made myself dinner that night. Grilled cheese and tomato soup, simple and easy, ate alone at that big dining table, surrounded by empty chairs and cold coffee cups and an untouched pie that nobody wanted. After dinner, I went for a walk, down to the river, along the path Lydia and I used to take every evening when she was alive. The sun was setting, turning the Hudson into liquid gold. The air was cool, clean, perfect. I thought about what came next. Martin and Vanessa would push harder now. They'd hire attorneys. They'd threaten. They'd try every angle to get what they wanted. But I had something they didn't have. Time, preparation, and the moral certainty that I'd done the right thing. When I got back to the house, I had one more voicemail from Martin. I didn't listen to it. Didn't need to. I knew what it would say. Some combination of anger and guilt-tripping and veiled threats. Instead, I called my own attorney. Left a message. Dennis, it's Arthur Delaney. I need you to prepare something for me. A formal letter explaining the trust situation. I want it ready by next week. Call me tomorrow and we'll discuss the details. Then I poured myself a glass of whiskey, the good stuff Lydia used to save for special occasions, and sat on the back porch looking at the river. 20 years ago, sitting in almost this exact spot, Lydia had asked me, "Do you think we're doing the right thing? Protecting the house this way?" I'd held her hand and said, "I think we're doing what we need to do, and if we're wrong, at least we'll be wrong together." She'd smiled. "That's all that matters, Arthur. Being wrong together is better than being right alone." She was gone now, but I wasn't alone. I had her memory. I had the legacy we'd built together. I had the certainty that when my time came, I'd have helped dozens of kids learn trades that would feed their families and give them dignity. That was worth more than any mansion, worth more than any inheritance, worth more than keeping the peace with a son who'd forgotten what really mattered. I raised my glass to the sunset, to the river, to the ghost of the woman who'd loved me when I had nothing and stayed with me when I had everything. "We did the right thing, LYD, I said to the evening air. They don't know it yet, but we did. And somewhere in the fading light, I swear I felt her squeeze my hand. The next chapter of this story was about to begin, and Martin and Vanessa had no idea what was coming. But they would. Soon. The phone rang again 3 days later. This time it wasn't Martin. It was Vanessa. I almost didn't answer. Let it ring twice, 3 times, but Curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to hear what angle she'd try next. Arthur. Her voice was sharp, professional. No pretense of warmth. We need to talk. I'm listening. Martin is very upset. You've put him in a difficult position. I actually laughed at that. I've put him in a difficult position? That's interesting. This isn't a joke, Arthur. What you're doing is going to have serious consequences. Legal consequences. There it was. The threat she'd been holding back during their visit. Now the gloves were off. Is that right? Your estate is a mess. No clear succession plan. No updated will. No power of attorney in place. If something happens to you tomorrow, everything goes into probate. The state will freeze your assets. It could take years to settle. And by the time it's done, legal fees will have eaten up half the value. She was good. I had to give her that. Her voice was calm, measured, designed to sound helpful rather than threatening. But I'd been in business long enough to recognize a shakedown when I heard one. Vanessa, let me ask you something. Did you ever actually care about Martin? Or was he just a good investment? Successful surgeon, solid income, family with assets. Silence. Then, colder, that's completely inappropriate. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you saw an opportunity and you took it. And now you're trying to cash out early. I'm trying to protect my husband's interests. By stealing from his father? Her voice rose slightly, the professional mask slipping. We're not stealing anything. We're trying to help you manage what you clearly can't handle on your own. I've been handling things just fine for 71 years. Have you? Because from my perspective, you're an elderly man living alone in a house that's far too large, with no support system, no plan for the future, and a stubborn refusal to accept help from the people who actually care about you. The people who actually care. That phrase hung in the air like poison. If you cared, Vanessa, you wouldn't have shown up at my door with legal papers and ultimatums. You would have called, visited, asked how I was doing. But you didn't do any of that, did you? We visit. When? Christmas 3 years ago? Thanksgiving before that? You visit when it's convenient, when there's something in it for you. She was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Harder, more direct. Let me be very clear, Arthur. If you don't take steps to properly organize your estate, we will have no choice but pursue legal action. We can petition the court to declare you incompetent, get a conservatorship, take control of your finances whether you like it or not. There it was, the real threat. Not taxes, not probate, control. My hands tightened around the phone, but my voice stayed calm. You really think a judge is going to declare a 71-year-old man with a successful business history, no debt, and perfect mental faculties incompetent? Based on what? The fact that I won't give my house away while I'm still breathing? Based on the fact that you're refusing reasonable financial planning, that you're isolated, that you have no support system. I can build a case. Arthur, that's what I do. Then build it. But I should warn you, I have my own attorney. And unlike you, he's been working with me for 20 years. He knows exactly what my plans are, and he's very good at what he does. Another pause. I could almost hear her recalculating, trying to figure out what I knew that she didn't. What plans? You'll find out soon enough. I'm having documents prepared. Legal documents. Explaining everything. You should receive them within the week. What kind of documents? The kind that will answer all your questions about my estate. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have things to do. Arthur, wait. I hung up. My heart was pounding. Not from fear. From anger. The sheer audacity of it. Threatening to have me declared incompetent. Threatening to take everything I had built. And doing it all while pretending it was for my own good. I walked to the kitchen, made myself tea with hands that shook slightly. Not from age. From rage, I was barely holding back. The kettle whistled. I poured the water, watched the tea steep, tried to calm the storm inside me. Lydia used to make tea when she was upset, said it forced her to slow down, to breathe, to think clearly before reacting. I missed her wisdom, missed her calm in moments like this. They're really going to try it, El Wadi, I said to the empty kitchen. They're going to try to take everything. But even as I said it, I felt that same certainty I'd felt in my study days earlier. They could try, they could threaten, they could hire the best attorneys money could buy. It wouldn't matter, because the house was already gone, already protected, already serving a purpose greater than their greed. I called Dennis, my attorney, that evening. He picked up on the second ring. "Arthur, I got your message. The letters are being prepared." "Good. But, Dennis, there's something else. Vanessa just threatened to petition for conservatorship, said she'd have me declared incompetent." He was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. "Let her try. I'd love to see that case. You're running a business, maintaining property, making sound financial decisions. There's not a judge in this county who'd grant that petition. It's an intimidation tactic. Nothing more." That's what I figured. But I wanted to make sure. "Arthur, the trust is airtight. Your mental competency is documented. Your financial records are impeccable. They have no case. None. All they can do is make noise. Then let them make noise. I want those letters sent as soon as possible. I want them to know exactly what they're up against. You'll have them by Friday." I thanked him and hung up. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was worried, but because I was planning, thinking through every possible move they might make, every angle they might try. I'd built a business from nothing, survived recessions, outlasted competitors, buried my wife, and kept going. I could handle my son and his lawyer wife. The next morning, Martin called. His voice was different, strained, almost pleading. "Dad, please, can we just talk? Without the lawyers, without the threats. Just you and me." Something in his tone caught me off guard. A glimpse of the boy I used to know. "I'm listening." "Vanessa, she's upset. I'm upset. We didn't mean for this to turn into whatever this is. We were just trying to help." "Help, Martin? You came to my house with legal papers demanding I sign over my property. That's not help. That's extortion." "It's not like that." "Then what's it like? Explain it to me." He was quiet. I could hear him breathing, struggling for words. "I don't know any more. Dad, I thought I was doing the right thing. Vanessa said it made sense, said it was smart planning. But now everything's a mess and I don't know what to do." For the first time since this started, I heard something real in his voice. Not greed, not calculation, confusion, maybe even regret. "Martin, let me ask you something. Do you remember what your mother used to say about money?" "Which thing?" "That money reveals character. It doesn't change it. Just reveals what was always there." He didn't respond. "I think that's what's happening here, son. This money, this house, this inheritance you think you're entitled to, it's revealing things. About you, about Vanessa, about what you value. That's not fair." "Maybe not, but it's true." Another long silence. Then quieter. "What happens now? Now you wait. You'll be getting a letter from my attorney. It'll explain everything. After you read it, if you want to talk, really talk, not threaten, not demand, you can call me. But until then, I think we both need space." "Dad." "Goodbye, Martin." I hung up before he could respond, before I could hear the hurt in his voice and second-guess myself. This wasn't cruelty. This was necessity. Sometimes the people you love most are the ones you have to stand firmest against. Not because you don't love them, but because you do. Because letting them get away with something wrong doesn't help them. It destroys them. Friday came. Dennis called. "The letters are being sent today. Certified mail. They should have them by Monday." "What do they say?" "Everything. The trust, the foundation, the scholarships, the fact that the house has been legally protected for 20 years, the fact that there is no estate for them to inherit beyond the cabin property. All of it, laid out in clear legal language they can't misinterpret. And a polite suggestion that if they continue to pursue legal action or make threats, you're prepared to counter with harassment charges." I smiled. "You're good at your job, Dennis. I learned from the best. Your wife was the one who insisted we make everything ironclad. She saw this coming 20 years ago. She saw a lot of things I didn't want to see. That's why you married her. After we hung up, I sat on my porch with coffee and watched the river. Monday was 3 days away. 3 days until they opened those envelopes and realized they'd already lost. 3 days until everything changed. Part of me felt guilty. Part of me wondered if I was being too harsh. If there was another way to handle this that didn't involve burning bridges. But then I remember Vanessa's voice on the phone. Cold, calculating, threatening to have me declared incompetent, threatening to take everything. And I remembered Martin sitting at my table, unable to meet my eyes, more worried about his inheritance than his father. No, there was no other way. Sometimes love means letting people face the consequences of their choices, even when it breaks your heart, especially then. Monday morning, I woke up early, made coffee, sat by the window and waited. I knew when the mail came, 10:30 usually, like clockwork. At 10:45, my phone rang. Martin. I answered. Dad, what is this? His voice was hollow, shocked, like someone had just told him everything he believed was a lie. That's the truth, son. That's what I've been trying to tell you. You gave it away? All of it. Not gave away. Repurposed. Put it towards something that actually matters. But it's my inheritance. My future. You're my father. And you're my son. Which is why this hurts so much. Because I raised you better than this, Martin. I raised you to value work, integrity, helping others, not grabbing what you can get before someone else takes it. I could hear Vanessa in the background, her voice sharp, demanding to see the papers. This can't be legal, Martin said. There has to be a way to challenge this. There isn't. The trust is irrevocable, has been for 20 years. You can hire 10 lawyers, and it won't change anything. Why would you do this to me? The question hit harder than I expected. I didn't do it to you, Martin. I did it for kids who need chances the way you needed chances. Kids whose parents can't afford to send them to school. Kids who want to learn trades, build things, make honest livings. Your mother and I decided a long time ago that if we couldn't trust you to carry on what we built, we'd make sure someone would. You didn't trust me? We wanted to. We hoped we were wrong. But we prepared for the possibility that we weren't. Silence. Long and painful. Then Vanessa's voice, clear and sharp in the background. Sue him. We'll sue for undue influence, for diminished capacity when the trust was signed, for... Vanessa, I said loudly, I can't hear you, and I'm telling you right now, any legal action you take against me or the foundation will be met with harassment charges and a restraining order. Your letter makes that very clear. Did you read the whole thing? More silence. I thought so. Now I'm going to say this one more time. The house is protected. Has been for 20 years. There is nothing you can do about it. The only inheritance Martin will receive is a lake cabin, which is worth about $200,000. That's it. That's all. This is insane. Vanessa shouted. You're punishing him for trying to help you. I'm protecting what his mother and I built. There's a difference. You're a bitter old man who's going to die alone. The words were meant to wound, but they just bounced off. Maybe, I said calmly, but at least I'll die knowing I didn't sell out everything I believed in for money I didn't earn. I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I unplugged it from the wall. They'd call back. Text. Email. Maybe even show up at my door again. But it didn't matter. The battle was over. And I'd won it the day I married a woman smart enough to see the future and strong enough to protect it. For 2 weeks after they received those letters, silence. No calls. No texts. No angry visits. Nothing. It was as quiet as my life had been in months. And I should have enjoyed it. Should have felt relief. But instead, I felt something else. Something heavier. Grief. Because even though I protected what mattered, even though I'd done the right thing, I'd lost my son in the process. Maybe I'd lost him years ago and just didn't want to admit it. But this made it final. Real. Undeniable. I kept myself busy. Worked in the garage. Restoring a '69 Camaro I'd picked up cheap at an estate sale. The engine was seized. The interior was shot. But the bones were good. That's all you need sometimes. Good bones and the willingness to do the work. I spent afternoons at the community center teaching basic carpentry to kids who've been written off by the school system. Troublemakers, mostly. Kids with anger issues or learning disabilities or home lives that made focusing on anything else impossible. They reminded me of Martin when he was young and struggling after Lydia died, angry at the world, lost, needing someone to believe they were worth the effort. One kid in particular, Danny, stuck with me. 16, already dropped out of school, working part-time at a fast food place to help his mom pay rent. But he had good hands, patient hands, the kind that could measure twice and cut once without being told. "Why do you do this?" he asked me one afternoon while we were building a bookshelf together. Teaching us, you don't get paid or nothing. Because somebody did it for me once. When I was not much older than you, a master plumber took me on as an apprentice. Taught me everything he knew. Didn't have to. I was just some punk kid who showed up asking for work. But he saw something in me worth developing. What happened to him? He died 20 years ago. Heart attack. But before he did, he told me something I never forgot. He said, "Arthur, the only way to repay what I've given you is to give it to someone else." Danny was quiet for a minute, sanding the edge of a board with careful, even strokes. "My dad left when I was 8, he said finally. "Never taught me nothing. Then I guess that's my job now." He looked up at me, and for just a second, I saw something in his eyes that reminded me of Martin. That hunger to be seen, to matter. "Thanks, Mr. Delaney. Thank me by showing up next week." He grinned. "Yes, sir." Moments like that made the silence for Martin hurt less. Not because they replaced him, but because they reminded me that legacy isn't just about bloodline. It's about impact, about what you leave behind in people's hearts and hands and the things they build. 3 weeks after the letters were sent, I got a different kind of mail, an official-looking envelope from a law firm I didn't recognize. Not Dennis's office. Something from Manhattan. I opened it carefully. Inside was a formal notice. Martin and Vanessa were contesting the trust, claiming I'd been coerced, that Lydia had been terminally ill when she signed it, that the foundation was fraudulent, that I'd hidden assets, that the trust violated inheritance law. It was garbage. All of it. Desperate attempts to find some legal foothold that didn't exist. But reading it still hurt, because every word was another nail in the coffin of our relationship. Every claim was my son telling the world he valued money more than his father. I called Dennis. "I got it too," he said before I could even speak. "It's nonsense, Arthur. Complete nonsense. The trust has been active for 20 years. The IRS recognizes the foundation as legitimate. The scholarships have been paying out for 15 years. Every document was properly filed, properly notarized, properly executed. They have zero case. So what happens now? Now we respond. I'll file a motion to dismiss. Include documentation proving everything. Financial records. Trust documents. Correspondence from the IRS. Testimonials from scholarship recipients. Everything that proves this foundation is real and has been operating legally for 2 decades. How long will that take? A few months. Maybe less. The judge will see right through this. It's a nuisance suit. Frivolous. I wouldn't be surprised if they get sanctioned for wasting the court's time. After I hung up, I sat in my study staring at that letter. Read it 3 times. Each time hurt more than the last. Not because I was worried about losing, but because this meant Martin had made his choice. He wasn't confused anymore. Wasn't conflicted. He'd chosen greed over family. Vanessa over me. Money over memory. And there was no coming back from that. I did something I hadn't done in years. I cried, not sobbing. Just silent tears running down my face while I sat in the chair Lydia used to curl up in when she read books on Sunday afternoons. "I'm sorry, Awidi," I whispered to the empty room. "I know you hoped he'd be different. I did too. But hope doesn't change reality. It just makes reality hurt more when it finally arrives." The next day, I made a decision. I called the foundation administrator, a woman named Patricia, who'd been managing the scholarships since we started them. "Patricia, I want to do something." I want to invite the current scholarship recipients to the house. All 5 of them. For dinner. That's a wonderful idea, Arthur. When? This Saturday. Tell them to bring their families, if they want. I'll cook. Nothing fancy. Just burgers and hot dogs. But I want to meet them. See their faces. Hear their stories. They'll be thrilled. These kids idolize you. You've changed their lives. They've changed mine too. They just don't know it yet. Saturday came warm and bright. I set up tables in the backyard, right near the river where the view was best. Grilled burgers and hot dogs. Made Lydia's potato salad from memory. Set out drinks in a cooler filled with ice. At 2 o'clock, they started arriving. First came Marcus, 19, studying electrical work. He showed up with his mom, a single parent who worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat. She hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. "You saved us," she whispered. I couldn't have afforded his tuition. He would have had to work full-time and forget about school. You gave him a future. Then came Sophia, 22, learning plumbing. She'd grown up in foster care, aged out of the system at 18 with nowhere to go. The scholarship gave her not just education, but hope. "I'm starting my own business next year," she told me, her eyes bright. "Flores Plumbing. I'm going to hire other foster kids. Give them the chance someone gave me." Next was James, 20, studying HVAC repair. His dad had died in a construction accident when he was 12. The scholarship meant he could finish his training without putting his family in debt. "My little brother wants to be a carpenter," he said. "I told him about you, about the foundation. He's applying next year." Then came 2 more. Emma, studying carpentry, and Danny, my Danny from the community center, who'd applied without telling me and gotten accepted. "You knew?" he asked, grinning. "Patricia might have mentioned it. I couldn't have done it without you, Mr. Delaney. The scholarship, yeah, but also you believing I could." We ate burgers and talked for hours. They told me about their classes, their projects, their dreams. They showed me pictures of things they'd built. Marcus had rewired an entire house. Sophia had replumbed a restaurant. James had installed HVAC systems in 3 commercial buildings. They weren't just learning trades. They were mastering them, becoming experts, building lives that would support families and communities for decades. And I'd helped make that possible. As the sun started setting, turning the river gold, Marcus raised a soda can. "To Mr. Delaney," he said, "for seeing potential in people everyone else overlooked." They all raised their drinks. "To Mr. Delaney," I raised mine back, but I was too choked up to speak. Because this right here was worth more than any mansion, worth more than any inheritance, worth more than blood ties to someone who'd forgotten what family really meant. After they left, I sat on the porch watching the last light fade from the sky. My phone was sitting on the table beside me, silent. No calls from Martin. No messages. Nothing. But I wasn't alone. I had 5 kids who called me to say thank you, who invited me to their graduations, who sent me pictures of their first jobs, their first paychecks, their first moments of pride and work well done. That was family. Real family. The kind you build through care and investment and believing in people when nobody else will. The lawsuit could come. The lawyers could fight. Martin and Vanessa could throw every dollar they had at trying to break the trust. It wouldn't matter, because the foundation wasn't just legal documents and bank accounts. It was Marcus and Sophia and James and Emma and Danny. It was lives changed and futures created, and hope given to people who'd almost given up. You can't sue that away. You can't contest it in court. You can't break it with greed. It was already built, already real, already making the world better in ways no inheritance ever could. I went inside, poured myself one more glass of Lydia's special whiskey, and raised it to her photo on the mantel. We did good, LYD. We really did. And I swear in the reflection of the glass, I saw her smile. The court hearing was scheduled for late October. Dennis called me a week before to prepare me for what to expect. "It'll be quick," he said. "They have no case. The judge will review our documentation, listen to their arguments, and dismiss. We might not even need to testify. But I want to. I told him, Arthur, I want to look my son in the eye and tell the truth. In front of a judge. On the record. I need him to hear it. Dennis was quiet for a moment. Then, all right, I'll make sure you're prepared. The hearing was in Poughkeepsie at the county courthouse. I dressed in my best suit, the same one I'd worn to Lydia's funeral. Dark gray, simple, dignified. I wanted to look like what I was, a man who'd worked hard his whole life and built something worth protecting. Dennis met me outside the courthouse at 8:30. We walked in together, through security, up the elevator to the 3rd floor. Martin and Vanessa were already there, sitting on a bench with 2 lawyers in expensive suits. Martin looked up when he saw me. Our eyes met for just a second. He looked tired, older. Like this had cost him more than money. But he didn't speak, didn't smile, didn't acknowledge me beyond that one glance. Vanessa didn't look up at all, just sat there studying her phone like I wasn't worth her attention. We were called into the courtroom at 9. Judge Morrison presiding. An older woman, maybe 65, with gray hair and sharp eyes that didn't miss anything. The lawyers presented their arguments first. Vanessa's team went on for 20 minutes about undue influence, coercion, suspicious timing, questionable beneficiary designations. They made it sound like the trust was some elaborate scheme to defraud my own son. Dennis responded calmly, methodically, presented document after document. The original trust agreement, signed by both Lydia and me, dated 2005, the formation papers for the foundation, IRS recognition of our tax-exempt status, annual reports showing scholarship distributions, testimonials from recipients, financial audits proving everything was legitimate. By the time he finished, Vanessa's lawyers looked uncomfortable. Judge Morrison reviewed the documents silently for what felt like forever. Then she looked up. Mr. Delaney, I'd like to hear from you directly. I stood up. My knees ached, but my voice was steady. Yes, Your Honor. This trust was created 20 years ago. Yes, ma'am. In 2005, my wife Lydia and I created it together. And your son, Martin, is claiming you were coerced into creating it. That your wife was terminally ill at the time and unable to make sound decisions. Is that accurate? No, Your Honor. That's completely false. Lydia wasn't diagnosed with cancer until 2008. In 2005, she was healthy. We created a trust together, of our own free will, because we wanted to do something meaningful with our assets. Can you explain why you chose to create a charitable trust rather than leaving your estate to your son? This was it, the moment I'd been waiting for. Your Honor, my son was raised with every advantage. Best schools, best opportunities. Full financial support through medical school. He became a successful surgeon. He married well. He has everything he needs to build his own wealth. My wife and I believe that continuing to hand him things he didn't earn wouldn't help him. It would hurt him. So we decided to invest in young people who actually need help. Kids from low-income families who want to learn trades, who want to work hard and build better lives. That's where our money could do the most good. And you believe your son has sufficient resources of his own? Your Honor, my son is a cardiothoracic surgeon married to a corporate lawyer. They live in a penthouse in Manhattan. They drive luxury cars. They take vacations to Europe. They're not struggling. They're not in need. They just want more. Judge Morrison looked at Martin. Mr. Delaney, do you have anything you'd like to say? Martin stood up slowly. For a moment, he just looked at me, and I saw something in his face I hadn't seen in years. Shame. Your Honor, He trailed off, started again. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought my father needed help, protection. But sitting here, listening to all this, I realized I was wrong. Vanessa's head snapped toward him. Martin, he ignored her, kept talking. My father built everything he has through hard work. He raised me alone after my mother died. He supported me through medical school. He never asked for anything in return. And the first time I try to help him, it's actually just me trying to get what I think I'm entitled to. His voice cracked. I'm ashamed, Your Honor. I'm ashamed of what I've become. The courtroom went silent. Even Vanessa's lawyers looked uncomfortable. Judge Morrison studied him for a long moment. Then she looked at Vanessa. "Mrs. Delaney, do you have anything to add?" Vanessa stood, her jaw tight. "Your Honor, with all due respect, this trust deprives my husband of his rightful inheritance. It's not fair. It's not right. And—" "Mrs. Delaney," the judge interrupted, "there is no law requiring parents to leave their estates to their children. Mr. and Mrs. Delaney had every right to dispose of their assets as they saw fit. And from everything I've seen here today, they did so legally, properly, and with noble intentions." She closed a folder in front of her. "This case is dismissed. The trust stands as written. The foundation will continue its work. And I'm ordering the plaintiffs to pay the defendants legal fees for bringing this frivolous lawsuit." She banged her gavel. "We're adjourned." It was over. Just like that. Dennis shook my hand. "Congratulations, Arthur." But I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at Martin, who stood frozen in place while Vanessa gathered her things with sharp, angry movements. "Martin," I said quietly. He looked up. "Can we talk?" "Just us." He glanced at Vanessa, who shot him a look that could cut glass. But he nodded. We walked outside together, away from the lawyers and the courthouse and the chaos. Found a bench in a small park across the street. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Just sat there watching cars pass, people walking, life continuing like nothing had happened. "I'm sorry, Dad," Martin said finally. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I know. I don't know what happened to me. When I became this person. I do. You started measuring your worth by your bank account instead of your character. You married someone who encouraged that, and slowly you forgot where you came from." He was crying now, silent tears running down his face. "I've lost you, haven't I?" I wanted to say no. Wanted to tell him everything would be fine, that we could go back to how things were. But I couldn't lie to him. "You haven't lost me completely. But you've damaged something that's going to take a long time to repair. If it can be repaired at all. What do? You figure out who you want to be. The man Vanessa wants you to be, or the man your mother raised you to be. Because you can't be both." He nodded slowly, wiping his eyes. "I loved her so much, Dad. Mom, I still miss her every day. So do I, son. So do I." We sat there a while longer. Eventually, Vanessa came looking for him, her face tight with anger. "We need to go," she said coldly. Martin stood up, looked at me one more time. "Can I call you?" "Sometime." "Yeah, you can call." He walked away with Vanessa, and I watched them go, watched her talking at him, sharp and insistent, watched him nodding, shoulders slumped, defeated. I didn't know if he'd actually call. Didn't know if this was the beginning of repair or just a final goodbye. But I'd done what I came to do, stood my ground, protected what mattered, spoke the truth. The rest was up to him. Dennis drove me home. We didn't talk much. He understood I needed silence. Needed time to process what had just happened. When he dropped me off, he said, "You did good in there, Arthur. Lydia will be proud." I hope so. That night, I made myself dinner and sat on the porch watching the river. The October air was cool, crisp, perfect. The leaves were turning gold and red. Everything was changing, like it always does this time of year. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered anyway. "Mr. Delaney?" A young voice. Female. Nervous. Speaking. "This is Ashley Rodriguez. I'm calling from the scholarship office. I just wanted to tell you. I just found out I'm one of next year's recipients. For carpentry." My throat tightened. "That's wonderful, Ashley. Congratulations. I can't believe it. I thought I'd have to give up on school. Work full-time just to help my mom. But now I can actually do this. I can actually become something." "You already are something," I told her. "The scholarship just helps you become more what you already are." She was crying. Happy tears. The kind that come from relief and hope and doors opening that seem permanently closed. "Thank you, Mr. Delaney. Thank you so much." After we hung up, I sat there with the phone in my hand, thinking about Martin sitting in some Manhattan penthouse right now, probably fighting with Vanessa, probably wondering how his life got so complicated. And I thought about Ashley, somewhere in upstate New York, probably calling her mom right now, probably crying and laughing and dreaming about the future she'd just been given. That's when I knew, without any doubt, that Lydia and I had made the right choice. Legacy isn't about blood. It's about impact, about making the world better in ways that outlast your own life. Martin would inherit the cabin. $200,000. More than most people see in a lifetime. Enough to show I hadn't abandoned him completely. But the house, the foundation, the scholarships, those belong to the future. To kids like Ashley and Danny and Marcus and Sophia. Kids who'd take what we gave them and build something beautiful. That was worth more than any inheritance. Worth more than any relationship with son who'd lost his way. And if Martin ever found his way back, if he ever became the man his mother wanted him to be, he'd understand that. Maybe not today. Maybe not for years. But someday. Winter came early that year. First snow in November, coating everything in silent white. I spent most mornings clearing the driveway, then sitting by the window with coffee, watching the river freeze at the edges. The lawsuit was over. The foundation was protected. Life had returned to its quiet rhythm. But Martin didn't call. Not that week. Not that month. Christmas came and went without a word. I didn't reach out either. Some bridges need time to rebuild. Or maybe they just stay broken. Either way, forcing it wouldn't help. Instead, I focused on what I could control. The foundation, the scholarships, the kids who actually wanted what I had to offer. In January, Patricia called with news. Arthur, we've received 43 applications for next year's scholarships. 43. That's more than we've ever had. Why the surge? Word got out about the lawsuit, about what you did. Local news picked it up. Some reporter wrote an article called "Man Chooses Charity Over Son." It went viral. I groaned. That's not exactly how I'd phrase it. I know, but it got people's attention. And now we have dozens of kids apply who need help. Good kids. Hard workers. We can only take 5. Then we find a way to take more. Arthur, the budget. I'll figure out the budget. Can you send me all the applications? She did. I spent the next week reading every single one. 43 stories of kids who wanted to learn trades, who wanted to work with their hands, who came from families that couldn't afford tuition. One application stood out. A 17-year-old named Michael Chun. His father had been a contractor who died in a fall from a roof when Michael was 14. His mother worked as a nurse. They were barely getting by. Michael wrote, "My dad taught me that building things is honest work. He said if you can create something with your hands, you'll never go hungry. I want to learn electrical work so I can support my mom and my little sisters, so I can honor what my dad taught me." I called Patricia back. How much would it cost to fund 10 scholarships instead of 5? About $50,000 a year. We don't have that in the budget. I do. I've got savings, investments. I'll add another $100,000 to the foundation's endowment. That should cover it. Arthur, that's a lot of money. It's just money, Patricia, and I can't take it with me. We expanded to 10 scholarships that year. 10 kids who got a chance they wouldn't have had otherwise. Michael Chun was one of them. He called me the day he found out, his voice breaking with emotion. "Mr. Delaney, I don't know how to thank you. My mom cried when I told her. She said it's like my dad sent you to us." Your dad would be proud of you, Michael. Work hard. Learn everything you can. And someday, when you're successful, help someone else the way you've been helped. I will, sir. I promise. That became my purpose. Not replacing Martin. Not filling the void he'd left. But creating something bigger than family disappointment. Creating a legacy that multiplied instead of diminished. By spring, I'd visited 3 of the trade schools where our scholarship recipients studied. Watched them work. Saw their skill, their focus, their pride. Sophia had started her business like she promised. Florist Plumbing. She already had 2 employees and more work than she could handle. "I want to hire scholarship recipients," she told me. "Kids like me who need a chance. Will you help me find them?" Absolutely. Marcus was working for a major electrical company, but he'd started teaching on the side. Just a couple nights a week, he said. Teaching kids at the community center, like you taught Danny. Somebody's got to keep the tradition going. Danny himself had graduated and gotten hired by a construction company. He sent me a photo of his first paycheck with a note. Look at that, Mr. Delaney, 4 figures. And I earned every dollar. These were my kids now, not by blood, by choice, by investment, by believing in them when nobody else would. In June, I got a letter, handwritten, Martin's handwriting. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Dad, it began, I don't know if you'll even read this. I wouldn't blame you if you threw it away, but I need to try. I've spent the last 6 months in therapy, working through a lot of things, about Mom's death, about growing up, about the pressure I put on myself to be successful, about how I let Vanessa's ambitions become mine. I separated from her, moved out, we're getting divorced. I know you probably think that's my problem to deal with. And you're right, but I wanted you to know. I also wanted to tell you something else. I went to one of the trade schools where your scholarship recipients study. Met some of them. Heard their stories. And I finally understood what you and Mom were trying to do. You weren't punishing me. You were protecting something more important than my bank account. You were creating real change in people's lives. The kind of change I used to create when I was a surgeon, before I got too focused on money and prestige, to remember why I went into medicine in the first place. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know I finally get it. And I'm trying to be better. Trying to be the man Mom would want me to be. If you ever want to talk, I like that. But if you don't, I understand. Love, Martin. I read it 3 times. Sat with it for days. Didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to crumple it up and throw it away. Another part wanted to call him immediately. Tell him I forgave him. That we could start over. But I did neither. Instead, I wrote back, Martin, I'm glad you're getting help. I'm glad you're making changes. I'm sorry about your marriage. But if it wasn't right, then leaving was the brave thing to do. I'm not ready to have you back in my life completely. Not yet. Trust has to be rebuilt slowly, and you broke it pretty thoroughly. But I'm willing to try. Slowly. Maybe we can meet for coffee sometime. Just coffee. Just talking. No expectations. No promises. Just 2 people trying to figure out if there's still a relationship worth salvaging. Think about it. Let me know. But don't rush it. And don't do it because you think it's what I want. Do it because it's what you want. Dad, I mailed it the next day. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. Martin. Hi, Dad. Hi, son. I got your letter. Coffee sounds good. Really good. Next Saturday, there's a place in Beacon, halfway between us. I'll be there. We met on a sunny Saturday morning in July. The coffee shop was small, quiet, filled with the smell of fresh espresso and pastries. Martin was already there when I arrived, sitting at a table by the window. He looked different, thinner, older, but also somehow lighter. We didn't hug, just shook hands, sat down across from each other. For a minute, we didn't speak, just sipped coffee and watched each other, trying to figure out where to start. You look good, he said finally. So, do you? Different, but good. I feel different. Clearer, I guess. Like I've been living in fog for years and it finally lifted. Therapy helping? Yeah, a lot. I'm realizing how much of my life I've spent trying to prove something. To you, to myself, to Vanessa, to everyone. And how exhausting that was. What are you trying to prove now? Nothing. Just trying to be decent. That's enough. We talked for 2 hours. Not about the house or the lawsuit or the money. About other things. His work. My projects. The scholarship recipients. His therapy. My restoration work. It felt fragile. Like we were both walking on ice, testing each step before putting our weight down. But it also felt real. More real than our conversations had been in years. When we finally said goodbye, he hugged me. Quick, awkward, but genuine. Thanks for giving me a chance, Dad. Thanks for asking for one. I drove home feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Not happiness exactly, not resolution, but possibility. The smallest hint that maybe, eventually, we could find our way back to each other. Not as we were before. That was gone, but as something new. Something built on truth instead of expectation, on choice instead of obligation. That evening, I sat on my porch watching the sunset turn the river gold. Summer birds sang in the trees. The air smelled like cut grass and possibility. I thought about Lydia, about how she'd always said, "People can change, Arthur, but only if they want to. You can't change them. You can only decide whether to be there when they do." Maybe Martin was changing. Maybe he wasn't. Time would tell. But either way, I'd done what I needed to do. Protected what mattered. Stood my ground. Created something that would outlast all of us. 5 scholarships had become 10. 10 would maybe become 20. And each one would ripple outward, creating skilled workers, supporting families, building communities. That was legacy. Real legacy. The kind that didn't depend on blood or court documents or anyone's approval. The kind that just existed, quietly changing the world, long after the people who started it were gone. I raised my coffee cup to the sunset, to the river, to Lydia's memory. We did it, LYD. We really did. And in the fading light, I could almost hear her voice, soft and sure. I never doubted you would. 2 years passed. Quiet years, mostly. Good years. The foundation grew. We funded 15 scholarships that second year. 20 the year after. Local businesses started donating. Other people, inspired by the story, set up their own trade education funds. What started as my and Lydia's quiet preparation had become something bigger than either of us imagined. A movement. A reminder that skilled work mattered. That people who built things with their hands deserved respect and support. Martin and I met for coffee every month. Sometimes twice a month. We didn't talk about the past much. Focused on the present. On rebuilding trust one conversation at a time. He left his high-pressure surgical position. Took a job at a community health clinic. Doing simple cardiac procedures for people who couldn't afford fancy Manhattan hospitals. The pay was less. The prestige was gone. But when he talked about his work now, I heard something I hadn't heard in years. Pride. Real pride. Not in titles or income. In the work itself. I did 3 valve replacements this week, he told me one Saturday. All patients who've been turned away from other hospitals because they couldn't pay. We saved their lives, Dad. That's what medicine is supposed to be. Your mother would be proud, I said quietly. His eyes got wet. Yeah, I think she would. One afternoon in late autumn, I invited him to the house. First time since the lawsuit. He pulled up in an old Honda, not the BMW, dressed in jeans and a flannel shirt, not designer clothes. We walked the property together, down to the river, through the woods, past the garage where I was restoring a '72 Bronco. This place is beautiful, he said. I'd forgotten how beautiful it is. You want to help me with that Bronco? Could use an extra set of hands. He grinned, actually grinned. Yeah, I'd like that. We spent the afternoon working on the engine, getting dirty, arguing about the best way to approach a rusted bolt, laughing when we stripped a thread and had to start over. It felt like old times, before medical school, before Vanessa, before everything got complicated. Just a father and son working with their hands on something real. As the sun started setting, we cleaned up and sat on the porch with beers. Dad, Martin said quietly, I need to tell you something. Okay, I'm getting remarried. I looked at him, surprised. That was fast. Not to Vanessa. Someone else. Someone I knew in medical school. Rachel. She's a pediatrician. Works at the same community clinic I do. We reconnected a year ago. And she's nothing like Vanessa. She grew up poor. Worked her way through college and medical school. She volunteers at free clinics on weekends. She doesn't care about money or status or any of that. She just cares about helping people. She sounds wonderful. She is. And Dad, I want you to meet her. Want her to see this place. To understand where I come from. The real me, not the person I pretended to be for the last 10 years. I'd love to meet her. He smiled, relieved. Thank you. And Dad, one more thing. Yeah, I've been talking with Patricia about the foundation. I want to donate. Set up a fund in Mom's name. Something that specifically helps kids who've lost parents. Kids like me. My throat tightened. Martin, I can't undo what I did. Can't take back trying to steal from you. But I can try to make up for it. Try to honor what you and Mom built instead of trying to destroy it. That's not necessary. It is, for me, I need to do this. We sat in silence for a while, watching the river darken as night came on. Your mother used to sit here, I said finally, right where you're sitting. She watched the sunset and talk about her dreams, building a family, creating something that mattered, helping people. I wish I remembered her better. I was so young when she died. She believed in second chances. She used to say that people aren't defined by their worst moments. They're defined by what they do after. What am I defined by, Dad? I looked at him, really looked at him, saw the gray in his hair that hadn't been there 2 years ago, the lines around his eyes, the weight of everything he'd carried and was trying to put down. You're defined by right now, by choosing to be better. That's all any of us can do. He nodded slowly. I'm trying. I know, son. I can see it. 3 months later, I attended Martin's wedding. Small ceremony, just close friends and family. Rachel was exactly what he described. Kind, genuine, more interested in people than things. She hugged me when we met. I've heard so much about you, Arthur. About the foundation. About everything you've done. Martin talks about you all the time. Good things, I hope. The best things. He says you taught him what real integrity looks like, what it means to build something that matters. After the ceremony, Martin pulled me aside. Thank you for coming, Dad. It means everything. Wouldn't have missed it. I know we're not. I know I can't fix everything I broke. But I want you to know I'm going to keep trying. Keep being better. For Rachel. For myself. For Mom's memory. That's all anyone can ask. We hugged. A real hug this time. The kind that said more than words could. Later that year, on what would have been Lydia's 75th birthday, I gathered everyone who mattered, the scholarship recipients. Patricia, Dennis, Martin and Rachel, Danny and Sophia and Marcus, and all the others whose lives had been touched by the foundation. We met at the house. 40 people crammed into the living room and spilling onto the porch. I stood up to speak, and the room went quiet. 20 years ago, my wife and I made a decision. We decided that if we couldn't trust our own blood to carry on what we'd built, we'd find people who would. Young people, hard workers, people who valued skill over status, work over wealth. I looked around the room, at faces young and old, at lives changed and futures created. We never imagined it would become this community, this family. But that's what you are. You're the family we chose, the legacy we built, the proof that character matters more than bloodline. I held up a photo of Lydia, young, beautiful, smiling that smile that once made my whole world make sense. This was for her. All of it, because she believed in second chances, in hard work, in helping people who'd been overlooked, and because she knew that true wealth isn't measured in property or inheritance. It's measured in lives touched, in futures created, in hope given to people who'd almost given up. The room was silent except for the sound of people crying. Happy tears. Grateful tears. Sophia stood up. Can I say something? Of course. Mr. Delaney, Mrs. Delaney, you saved my life. I was aging out of foster care with nowhere to go. No family. No future. Just fear. And then I got that letter saying I'd been chosen for a scholarship. I cried for 3 days straight. Not sad tears. Relief tears. Because someone finally saw me. Someone finally believed I was worth investing in. She looked around the room. All of us here, we're proof that people aren't their circumstances. We're proof that with a chance, with support, with someone believing in us, we can become anything. Others spoke up. Michael Chun, who'd lost his father. Emma, who'd grown up in poverty. Danny, who I'd taught in that dusty community center. Each of them telling stories of how the foundation changed their trajectory, how they'd gone from hopeless to employed, from struggling to thriving, from invisible to valued. Martin was crying openly, not from sadness, from understanding, finally understanding what his mother and I had been trying to create. After everyone left, he stayed to help clean up. "Dad," he said as we washed dishes together, "I get it now. I finally get it. This isn't about money. Never was. No, it's about meaning. About making sure your life counts for something bigger than yourself. I wasted so many years chasing the wrong things. But you're chasing the right things now. That's what matters." We finished cleaning in comfortable silence. Before he left, he hugged me again. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, son." Now I sit here on this porch, 73 years old, looking out at the river that's been my constant companion for 40 years. The sun is setting, painting the water gold in orange and red. The same colors it's been painting since the day Lydia and I first walked this property and decided to make it ours. Except it was never ours. Not really. We were just caretakers, stewards, people passing through who had the chance to leave something behind worth remembering. The house will outlast me. The foundation will continue long after I'm gone. The scholarships will keep changing lives for decades, maybe centuries. That's legacy. Real legacy. The kind that doesn't depend on one person or one family or one moment. The kind that grows and spreads and multiplies like seeds planted in good soil. My phone rings. Another scholarship recipient calling to say thank you. They do that sometimes. Call just to check in, to share good news, to remind me that what I did mattered. This one's named Jennifer, 19, studying to be an electrician. "Mr. Delaney, I just got my first job. Real job. $40,000 a year with benefits." My mom cried. She said she never thought she'd see this day. "Congratulations, Jennifer. You earned it." "No, sir. You made it possible. I just opened a door. You walked through it. That's all you." After we hang up, I pour myself one last glass of Lydia's whiskey, raise it to the sunset, to the river, to the memory of the woman who taught me what really matters. We did it, LYD. We took everything we built and turned it into something that'll outlive us both. Something that changes lives. Something that matters. I can almost hear her voice, soft and sure. That's all I ever wanted, Arthur. To matter. To make a difference. To leave the world a little better than we found it. Well, I say to the fading light, mission accomplished. So let me tell you what I learned from all this. What I want you to take away if you're facing something similar. If someone you love has chosen greed over family. If you're wondering whether to fight or surrender. If you're trying to figure out what legacy really means. Never let greed disguise itself as love. When someone claims they're helping you while trying to take from you, believe their actions, not their words. True wealth isn't measured in property or bank accounts. It's measured in peace of mind, in relationships that matter, in the lives you touch and the hope you create. And if someone betrays your kindness, don't rush to fight them. Don't waste energy on revenge. Just smile, prepare quietly, and let time reveal everything. Because quiet justice is the most powerful kind. The kind that doesn't need an audience. The kind that just exists, changing the world one life at a time, long after the noise and the conflict fade away. So when my son, my own flesh and blood, stood in front of me demanding my house and threatening legal action, I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't curse. I just smiled and listened. They thought they were taking everything from me, thought they'd won before the game even started. They didn't expect that I'd already given it away to something much greater than their greed, to kids who needed chances, to futures that needed building, to hope that needed planting. And that's how justice found its way home. Not through courts or lawyers or conflict, but through preparation. through choosing meaning over money, through building something that would outlast all of us and make the world better in the process. That's true justice. Quiet justice. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind that just exists, steady and sure, changing everything it touches. If this story touched you, if it reminded you that kindness is power and integrity matters more than inheritance, I want to hear from you. Type quiet justice in the comments below. Share your own story of choosing what's right over what's easy. Inspire someone else who might be facing the same choice. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because there are more stories like this coming. Stories about people who chose character over convenience, who built legacies that mattered, who proved that true wealth isn't what you take with you, but what you leave behind. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And remember, in a world that measures everything by money, be the person who measures it by meaning instead. That's how you win. That's how you build something that lasts. That's how you create justice so quiet, so powerful, so undeniable that it changes everything without making a sound. Now go, build your own legacy, and make it count.